UC Davis. I'm sophomore. So I'm here today to discuss a very significant topic related to the business and industrial world. As part of a research project, I investigated the environmental degradation as well as the exploitation of people of the rural community in a small village in South India. I did this in the hope of answering a very important question. Do CSR policies of large pharmaceutical corporations in India protect the rural population and their environment from exploitation? Before we go any further, CSR or corporate social responsibility is a set of policies that aims to make sure that corporations conduct their businesses ethically. Now back to the question. I'll give you the answer in advance. They don't. As we go on, I'll tell you how and why. Let's start at the beginning. To get an idea of the context, let me tell you a little about the country we're talking about here, India. India is a beautiful country. It's very culturally rich and it's packed with mesmerizing tourist attractions. But there are a number of things hidden behind the curtain that need attending to. One of the biggest problems in this country is poverty. Over 20% of the country is below the poverty line. That means 270 million people are poor in India. That's 1 in 5 people. Out of these people, about 25% live in rural areas without any properly structured government. And in these rural areas, the main source of livelihood is farming, which means that there is a large volume of land there that is sparsely populated. Given this, a lot of large pharmaceutical companies buy up large amounts of land there and set up plants in these areas. The reason for this is that there's legislation preventing pharmaceutical industries from setting up in areas with prime settlements, which rules out pretty much all cities and major towns. This is because pharmaceutical companies are a major cause for pollution to the environment. There was a study by the Department of Pharmaceutical Technology at the Merit Institute of Technology on the subject. They called it a review on pharma pollution. The study concluded that pharmaceuticals have a major impact on nature and that in most cases that they investigated, high concentrations of deadly pharmaceutical waste was found in the sewage systems of these plants. Now, a lot of times, these industries set up in villages can cause great inconvenience to the inhabitants of the village. Exactly how, you ask? The sewage with high concentrations of chemical waste ejected by the factories seeps into the ground and affects the quality of the soil as well as the water, thereby affecting both their livelihood and means of living. So they lose their drinking water, they lose the ability to farm their necessities, and they lose a lot more. Now that we've established how big pharma companies can affect rural populations, what systems are put in place to protect them? CSR policies. The business department at the University of Edinburgh defines corporate social responsibility, as mentioned before, as a set of policies that aims to make sure that corporations conduct their businesses ethically. So with respect to the context, CSR entails 1. Working in partnership with the local community, and 2. Environmental protection and sustainability. Just to get an idea, a few exemplary CSR initiatives by corporations include the Workers' Wellbeing Initiative launched by Levi Strauss, the guys who make your jeans, the Living Wage Initiative by Patagonia Supply Chain, and the Community Involvement Program by Xerox. There was one specific company that I focused on during my investigation of this topic, aiming to use it as my case study, Aurobindo Pharma. It's a company that manufactures generic pharmaceuticals and active pharmaceutical ingredients. It's a multinational corporation with its base in India. As per their website, their CSR policies are promoting education, supporting preventive healthcare, eradicating hunger, poverty, and malnutrition, making safe drinking water available, encouraging environmental sustainability, sustaining ecological balance and conservation of natural resources, encouraging rural sports, and setting up old age homes. The specific plant that I had access to was in a village called Badampet. This village is quite small by Indian standards and has a population of a few thousand. Like any other village, they also depend on agriculture for their livelihood. When I visited Badampet for the first time, the first thing that I noticed was the constant chemical smell. The next thing I noticed was that there was not much healthy vegetation growing around there, just weeds and shrubs. It didn't look like an agriculturally dependent area. So I asked a local about it, and he said that a new factory had opened up and that was the cause for all that was wrong with the village. To investigate further, I decided to interview the local inhabitants. Before I talk about any of what the locals of the village said to me, let me show you a few clips of the interviews that I took of them.
20-30 ఎకరాలు ఖరాబ్ అవుతుంది. ఇట్లా నష్టపోతున్నాం. గొర్రె మేపుకున్నా బర్రె మేపుకున్నా ఇట్లా నీళ్ళు తాగి చచ్చిపోతున్నాయి. ఈ గడ్డి ఊరితే కూడా గడ్డి చచ్చిపోతుంది. చేపలు బతకడం లేదు. నీళ్ళు తాగే అవకాశం లేదు. వర్షం వచ్చిన భూమి ఖరాబ్ అవుతుంది. ఈ అందులో వెనక బోల్డర్ పోతే కెమికల్ వచ్చేది. ఆ బోల్డర్లో మోటార్ తీస్తే కూడా కెమికల్ వచ్చి మోటార్లు పడిపోయాయి. ఏం పంట పండేది. బర్రుది పౌషులు ఆవులు అన్నీ చచ్చిపోతున్నాయి.
అని అయ్యింది నిజమే. ఈ కెమికల్ కంపెనీ గొర్రె మేక ఖరాబే, చెట్లు ఖరాబైనాయి, మనుషులు ఖరాబైనాయి.
అన్ని నష్టమే ఉన్నాయి కంపెనీ వల్ల. వాసనకు పంటలు అయితే లేవు. చేనులలో పనికి వచ్చి వాసనకు పని చేయబుద్ధి అయితే లేదు. కాళ్ళు చేరుతున్నాయి.
When I asked the locals of the lower economic class if the plant had affected them, one person answered that the company is releasing all sorts of fumes into the air and that is the cause of the constant pungent chemical smell in the entire village. His wife added that the smell causes her loss of appetite and nausea and makes it very difficult to work. Another said that the trees have all died and the only vegetation that grows in the village anymore is weeds. Someone else added that even crops don't grow in that village anymore, that their source of food and income has been taken away from them. A woman stepped out at this point and said that her husband and a number of other men from the village have left the village to find work elsewhere. Another woman said that because the trees are gone, most of their wells have dried up, and the water in the ones that are left is polluted and not fit for use. She added that because of this, they have to travel to nearby villages to get water. A shepherd came up to me at this point and told me that most of his livestock was dead, and that part of it was alive. That part of it that was alive was stricken with disease. He said that this was the case with all farmers in the village. Most of the animals were either dead because of drinking polluted water or because of starvation because of the dearth of fodder. A number of people also said that their children had been affected, that they were very susceptible to disease. When I asked them a second question, which was whether or not they received any assistance from the company, some said that they purify the water and then sell them to it at a high premium, but that's about it. There is no other assistance that they have received from the company. Others just said that the company has given them no assistance whatsoever. To the third question, which asked whether authorities did anything to bail them out of their situation, they all have the same tune. They said that the local sarpanch or head of the local government was being paid to hush this up. They all seemed frightened when I tried to ask them any follow-up questions. Well, when I interviewed people from the higher economic classes, the landlords, I interviewed one landlord who lived in the area. Asked him the same questions. When I asked him if the plant had affected him at all, he said that the revenue he gets from his farms had decreased to some extent, and the farmers were not paying their complete dues. But his life was not majorly affected because he lived far enough from the plant to not feel its effects. Incidentally, his son was an employee of the company. He said that his son would not admit to it, but his working conditions were terrible. He only did it for the money since their other avenues had dried up. Other people of the relatively higher economic class were very reluctant to talk. One other person had a brief conversation with me. He said that the coming up of the plant in the village was a good thing, that it would produce paying jobs for the inhabitants. It turned out that his sons too worked in the plant. The responses of the lower economic clusters to my questions were very dramatic. Some people cried, some people yelled. Everybody was very passionate. This shows that, they were truly affected by the coming up of the plant. They were the highest stakeholders in the coming up of the plant, and they lost everything. They lost their land, which by way of farming was their source of income and necessities, like food. And additionally, they're being caused tremendous amounts of misery because of the smell, fumes, the disease spread by the plant. Well, the locals of the relatively higher economic class were also affected, but not nearly as bad. They don't make as much revenue as they used to, and also since some of their children worked at the companies, they might not have thought saying anything was good because they might have thought it was a conflict of interest. And from the responses of the lower economic class, you could also see that the company itself had brought no good fortune to the village. They seem to have done nothing worthwhile to alleviate the misery that the inhabitants of the local village were in, and in spite of being the reason for the misery themselves. Now, to answer the question that prompted my research, do CSR policies of large pharmaceutical corporations in India protect the rural population and their environment from exploitation? Well, when you talk about pharmaceutical companies in India, Aurobindo International is by far one of the biggest ones. And it is apparent from the state of Badampet how much attention they pay to their CSR. Let's go through the CSR one by one and see what they've done. Promoting education. Well, they aren't doing this in Badampet. In fact, the one school that was in Badampet had to close down because of its proximity to the plant. Supporting preventive healthcare. They aren't doing this in Badampet. Eradicating hunger, poverty, and malnutrition. They are in fact adding to the hunger, poverty, and malnutrition in Badampet by making their resources unusable. Encouraging environmental sustainability. Well, they're definitely not doing this. As we can see from the responses of the local population, they've destroyed everything, their land, the vegetation, and more. Or making safe drinking water available. They're providing them with safe drinking water, but when they have to pay a high premium for it, it sort of voids that, doesn't it? And this is not limited to the plant on Aurobindo Pharma. There are a number of corporations that post false claims on their websites and in fact add to the woes of the local population. So the answer is no. CSR policies do not protect the rural population and their environment from exploitation. I believe, without question though, that if a company were doing even 50% of what they claim to be, the state of the rural population would be much better. Look at other examples around the world. Look at Merck with its Mectizin donation program. They do 300 million treatments annually for river blindness and LF. Look at Project Sambhav by the same company, based in India, and 15 million unprivileged suffering from hepatitis C were cured free of charge. Look at Unilever, the largest consumer goods business in the world. Their sustainable living plan has worked tremendously. And so from this you can see that CSR does work. It can help the underprivileged and it can reduce the effect on the environment. So what is the problem with pharma companies in India? You can see that when I asked the locals whether the authorities helped them, they replied saying that the local authorities had been bought by the company. This doesn't seem far-fetched because according to the NDTV report in 2012, the State Pollution Board had asked them to shut down their plant, but a year later they were up and running again. And this is a common practice in India. There are a lot of incidences when big companies get their way just by paying the right people. So that's the problem with pharma companies in India. Corruption. It is because of this that they are not held accountable for their actions. So what's the fix? The answer is that there is no quick fix. The only way to prevent such things from happening and to make the functioning of these companies just and sustainable is to eliminate the cause that prevents them from doing that: corruption. There is no formulaic way of doing that. The only thing we can do is make people aware. That is the first step to stop corruption, the first way to make sure that companies are held accountable for their actions, and the first step to make sure that CSR policies are not just used to make websites look pretty. Thank you.